Okay, continuing on, we're going to, I'm moving into course description. And as I said in the previous podcast, the focus of this course are Hitler and Stalin. The key moment in the turning point really in the history of the European theater during World War II wasn't D-Day, although D-Day was hugely important, obviously, June 6, 1944, when the Americans, the British, the Canadians landed in France. But it was, to me, Stalingrad, when the Russians defeated the Germans in the important industrial city of Stalingrad on the Volga River in 1942. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to focus on some of the aspects of the fighting that occurred on the Eastern Front, or a large part of the fightings that occurred on the Eastern Front. We will talk about the U.S. involvement in the war. One of the aspects that I like about this course, and that was very, very successful when I taught it a year ago, there's a wonderful book that's an interview of where Soviet female veterans are interviewed, something along the lines of just less than 10% of the Soviet army was female. And you had a number of female snipers that killed over 150 German soldiers each. These snipers, Soviet snipers, were very, very skilled and very, very deadly. And a historian in Russia undertook the task of interviewing a selection of these women and to talk about their experience. And it's quite an extraordinary book. And like I said, it really resonated with students last semester, and I think it will with this semester as well. Um, we're going to talk, of course, about the Holocaust in the European theater. Um, Essential event, one of the great crimes, one of the great horrors of all of human history. Um, I sometimes fear that some students, not all students by any means, but some students, they get a little bit too into the Holocaust. Um, I, I, yeah, I don't know. It's there's just a little bit too much interest in the Holocaust, and we're going to talk about it. It's a central part of this course, but stay a little bit detached from the suffering, or don't get too much into the suffering, I guess is another way that I would put it. Um, and keep your distance from it a little bit and realize that what's going on here was the state policy of Hitler, and it was Hitler really seeing one of his plans, the extermination of the Jewish race. He wanted to see it to its conclusion. And it's not just Jews, although the majority of those that were killed in the Holocaust were Jews. It's gypsies, it's homosexuals. Hitler was also involved in murdering uh, what we would call today physically challenged, mentally challenged Germans that were not Jewish, not gypsy. They were part of the Jewish community that he deemed inferior. He's very much into race and purifying the race. So yeah, we'll talk about the Holocaust. You'll come out of the course with a good understanding of how the Holocaust worked. There's a wonderful new book that you're reading called The Ravine for this course. And also, hopefully you'll get we're reading a selection of a book where it describes how a group of ordinary Germans become involved in the Holocaust. So there will be definitely a section of the Holocaust about the Holocaust in this course. You can take a look at the course objectives. I don't think I really need to go through those. This is a hybrid course. We're meeting in person, which I'm very happy about, on Thursdays at 2:30 at MH30426. Um, and I really think for UTSA, given the nature of our students, the hybrid model is really the perfect model because what I'll do, and I'll talk about this in a second, I'll post online lectures and online material that you'll be responsible for when we meet in person. But why I think the hybrid model works so well is I think it's good to be in the same classroom with a set of students for an hour and 15 minutes a week. I'm going to try to reserve those sections of the class as much for discussion as I can. I'm going to try to lecture as little as I can. I want to make that hour and 15 minutes very, very lively, which is why it's important that the students do the reading, that you all do the reading for this course. So I'm going to try to keep the Thursdays quite lively to move along pretty quickly. And then I'm going to disseminate information in the online section of the course. So why I think it works well for UTSA students is something I've alluded to before. I know how busy most of you are. You have very, very full lives inside of class, but especially outside of class. So you have flexibility for half the course. You can access the material anytime you want, as long as you've accessed it by the time class starts. But I do think it's useful just to be in the same class with the same group of students studying the same thing. I think there's a little spark that sets off where when we're all in the classroom together. And I found that it works very well. I found in the past it works very well, and I think it's going to work very well this semester as well. Um, each week, I'm going to record and post podcast lectures, documentaries, maps, and other material. Um, I I'm committed to getting that material to you by Monday morning before the Thursday class, and if I can, I'll get it to you earlier because, of course, you need to have time to access it, and because you're going to be tested on it. Um, Thursday's a little bit of an awkward day, honestly, I think, for a hybrid course. I usually teach my hybrid courses on Mondays or Tuesdays, but it was just the way it worked. When we do the schedule for the professors, you don't always get exactly what you want. Um, but I do promise you, I'm going to give you enough time to access the material for this course, the online material, so that by the time you're quizzed on it on Thursday, or that you have plenty of time or enough time to access it and digest it before you're quizzed on it on the Thursday. Uh, the books that we're reading that are in the bookstore, they're also on reserve in the JPL reserve. Hitler and Stalin, that's kind of the textbook of this course. Uh, it I chose this book because, again, as I've said many times, the focus of the course are the machinations of Hitler and Stalin, and this will take us through the A, B's, and C's, the events of the theater and the European theater in World War II. Doesn't talk too much about the U.S. involvement, but I'll fill that in my lectures, especially after Pearl Harbor. But again, essentially, the U.S. doesn't get involved in World War II, if you think about it, until 1942, because Pearl Harbor so late in the war. Um, Unwomanly Face of War is the book I mentioned before. That's the interview of Soviet female veterans, an amazing, amazing book. The Ravine, it's a book, it's a very innovative way of looking at the Holocaust, very short but very powerful book. And then The Boy's Crusade is by Paul Fussell, who's actually a literature professor, but who served in World War II. And it talks about the experience of the young men who fought in World War II. Now, the young U.S. American GIs who fought in World War II. So we will talk about the U.S. involvement. It just won't be front and center. There's some selections that I am going to post on Canvas. Uh, I didn't feel like I needed you to make you buy the book. Reese, A Stranger to Myself, it's a first person account of a German soldier in the Soviet Union talking about becoming involved in the mass killings. A very powerful piece. He actually died during the war. Ernie Pyle, Brave Men. Pyle's a U.S. correspondent. And we're going to read a couple of his articles, very, very moving articles as he describes uh, his observations of U.S. soldiers. Ordinary Men is the book that I talked about a little bit before in this podcast. It looks at this group of ordinary Germans who become executioners in Poland, and Browning has a thesis as to why they went on this trajectory. Um, then a couple of small pieces of primary evidence, and I think I'm going to stop there for this one, and I'll talk about the Life magazine and just as I move on. So I'll stop right here.